Commander Reistad's daughter, Brenna Reistad, has removed his cap, has placed the red commander's cap on his head. She is also placing the pin on the commander's lapel. The chair recognizes past National Commander Butch L. Miller for the purpose of administering the oath of office to our new National Commander of the American Legion.
Thank you, Commander. I need the strip.
You don't have it memorized?
I don't have it memorized. I'm sorry. Brett, come on up here if you would, please. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Brett P. Reistad.
I, Brett P. Reistad.
Do solemnly pledge myself.
Do solemnly pledge myself.
To perform faithfully and impartially.
To perform faithfully and impartially.
The duties of the office of the National Commander of the American Legion.
The duties of the office of Commander of the American Legion.
I further pledge myself.
I further pledge myself
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and that of the American Legion.
And that of the American Legion.
I do not subscribe to
the
principles of any group opposed to our form of government. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Frank.
Thank you, Butch.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2018-2019 National Commander of the American Legion, Brett P. Reistad.
I was influenced at an early age. In my 7th grade, I went to a military school for a year. That taught me a lot. Taught me about discipline, taught me about reward, taught me about responsibility, taught me about personal pride, and it gave me a respect for the military. And ever since that point, I had always had a desire to serve my country. So there was no question when I was going through high school that I was going to go in the military, not go to college. And for two purposes: to serve my country as a patriotic citizen, and secondly, to start on the road of becoming independent. And I achieved both. I learned about my eligibility in the American Legion back in 1981. I was serving as a police officer in one of our district stations, and I was responsible for managing the traffic control for a downtown parade. And while in the staging area before the parade kicked off, I ran into 4 gentlemen from the American Legion, 2 carrying flags and 2 carrying M1 rifles. Now, when I served in the Army for ceremonial purposes and for field purposes, we carried M14 rifles instead of M16. So there's a similarity between the M1 and the M14, and I just asked if I could look at the M1 because I'd never handled one before. So the gentleman gave it to me, and I stood there and I did the manual of arms with it, and then all of a sudden the eyes open up like this, and the gentleman asks me if I'm a veteran, and I said, well, I served in the military, and he said, well, when did you serve in the military? And I said, from 1974 to 1978. He pulls an application out of his wallet and opens it up and looks at it and says, you qualify for membership in the American Legion. And he puts that application down on the hood of my police car, gives me a pen and says, sign here. and give me 25 bucks. Well, I realized down the road that I've had a desire to be a public servant, and public safety was something I had an interest in. I was a volunteer fireman for about 5 years, and then became a police officer. I started the job a week after I left the military, and been involved in that for 26 years. You know, I still wake up in the morning pinching myself over the fact that, you know, is this really happening to me? I'm very proud of this organization, and I will do my very best as National Commander to promote it and to open the doors of our Legion Post to make sure people know of our history. I think that that's important for communities to understand where we've been and what we've done, to know where we're going in the future. Oh, I meant to tell you that after joining the American Legion at that parade, the following year, I was marching down the road as part of that color guard.
Thank you. Commander Rohan, fellow delegates, distinguished guests, family, and friends, thank you. Thank you for this tremendous honor and for the trust you have placed in me to represent you and this great American Legion as your 100th elected National Commander. I would not be standing here today if not for those who taught, mentored, advised, supported, and gave me a chance to hone my skills and develop the knowledge and confidence necessary to assume the American Legion's highest office. I wish to thank you, the Legionnaires that make this organization great. I wish to thank my family, especially my loving wife, Jessica, who believes in me and supports everything I do. She wasn't feeling up to making the trip here, but is watching from home and is here with me in spirit. I love you, honey. To my loyal Virginia Legionnaires, Team Virginia, who have supported me and our campaign in every way imaginable, I'll never be able to adequately thank you except to make you proud. To my good friend and campaign manager, Lyndon Dixon, who hasn't missed a beat, you're the best. To my McLean Post 270 family, who have encouraged my development and supported me every step of the way since 1981. To my employer, the Regional Organized Crime Information Center, for giving me the flexibility to engage in a national campaign. To our past national commanders who provided me with sage advice and support. To the leadership team for giving me the opportunity to audition for the role I'm about to assume. To the Legion staff who made me look better than I would have without them. And to my family and friends, some of whom are with me today, my daughter Brenna, and some of my Army buddies and lifelong friends who served with me more than 40 years ago. Thank you all. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate Commander Rohan for a great year. Someone recently told me that I have some high heels to fill. Also, congratulations to our soon-to-be elected national officers, a great group of dedicated Legionnaires who are committed to making the American Legion the best it can be. I would also like to congratulate my American Legion family partners, newly elected American Legion Auxiliary National President Kathy Dungan of Mississippi, and Sons of the American Legion National Commander Greg Doc Gibbs of New York, two very capable leaders who I'm looking forward to working with. The American Legion family is in great hands. Today begins a 15-month celebration of our centennial. A lot of history has been made in the past 100 years. This is a unique opportunity for us to reflect on our many accomplishments and share them with our friends, neighbors, and communities. It's also an opportunity for us to be a part of that history. My theme for the year is celebrating our legacy, but it's more than that. It's also about charting the course for our future and remaining strong and relevant. Strength, my friends, is paramount. That's why I have chosen Team 100 to be our centennial membership theme, to bring all our resources to bear, increase our membership, and start our second century of service off on the right foot. To demonstrate what I mean by Team 100, let's watch this brief video.
What is Team 100?
Team 100 is a movement.
A legacy.
It's a reflection of our past.
And a look into our future.
Team 100 represents the best of us.
Team 100 represents the fight in us.
Team 100 isn't the beginning or the end.
It's a continuation of 100 years of service to the community, state, and nation.
Let's build a new legacy together.
We are Team 100!
You, my fellow Legionnaires, are Team 100. And I need your commitment to achieve this success, just as you once committed yourself to serving your country. A wise man once said, in order to succeed, we must believe that we can. I not only believe that we can, I know we can. I truly believe that you are the right team at the right time. I've spent much of the past 2 years traveling this great country of ours, visiting with members of the American Legion family, and absorbing as much knowledge as I can to prepare for this moment. I not only learned a great deal about the American Legion, but also about the spirit and commitment of our Legionnaires, the same spirit and commitment that inspired our founders as they built this great organization from nothing more than an idea. Whether it be volunteering in a VA medical center, conducting funeral honors for our departed brothers and sisters in arms, volunteering at American Legion Boys State, or raising money for a Legion charity, you make a difference in the lives that you touch, and I was privileged to see it firsthand. Over this next Legion year, I am challenging you to raise $5 million for our veterans. In the very near future, I will report to you how this money will be used. I also made a considerable number of friends during this campaign who gave me support and encouragement. Many of you are seated before me. Thank you for your friendship. It means so very much to me. As you saw in the video, I'm a retired police officer. I'm also a former volunteer firefighter and emergency medical technician. The similarities between first responders and veterans are many. We are all committed to public service, a commitment that requires the willingness to risk our own lives to perform our sworn duties. And that's exactly what the founders of our organization did more than a century ago. They sacrificed, fought, and many were wounded to free Europe so Americans could be safe at home. It's a scenario that has repeated itself in other parts of the world in every war era since. The wartime veterans of the American Legion our freedom's first responders. From World War I to the current global war on terrorism, Legionnaires have responded to our national emergencies. Whether stateside or in a combat theater, we all sacrificed something to ensure that our liberties and our communities would be preserved. This is a legacy set by our founders. It's also a legacy worth celebrating and continuing for the next century. What those Legionnaires created in 1919 was unprecedented. They formed a network committed to a half-dozen bedrock principles. They included care for one another, support the families of those who did not come home from World War I, as well as those who came home sick and disabled. Provide a support network for children and youth, who the early Legionnaires saw as the future of the nation and the key to strengthening the nation in the event of future national security needs. Promote patriotic values, the concept of Americanism. At a time of rising threat to the democratic way of life in the aftermath of the Bolshevik Revolution and its spread to the United States, and later the emergence of fascism and Nazism. Fight for a well-resourced and equipped military that would give Americans the best chance to succeed in future armed conflicts, and to promote the honorable nature of military service. Ensure that the United States military sacrifices are not forgotten by serving essentially as global ambassadors of remembrance at cemeteries, memorials, and monuments to American military heroes. Out of these principles arose what the American Legion calls its 4 pillars: veterans, youth, defense, and Americanism. Built on a strong foundation of God and country, under each pillar are programs and services undertaken at every level of America, from the local American Legion post to the department, to the national headquarters, and international United States military duty stations located in foreign countries. All the same values envisioned by the World War I generation are performed in communities, states, the nation, and around the world today. The American Legion received its federal charter from Congress on September 16, 1919, in part to fulfill functions the government would otherwise need to perform. Foremost is representation of veterans in the pursuit of VA benefits, education, health care, and respect from a grateful nation. To best deliver such benefits, the American Legion spent much of its first decade lobbying to assemble all federal veteran services under one agency, the United States Veterans Bureau, now called the Veterans Administration, which was created in 1930. At any given time, the American Legion's more than 3,600 accredited service officers today are working on the disability claims of some 750,000 veterans worldwide. Prior to the American Legion's efforts, veterans had little or no route to appeal their benefits decisions. As the American Legion reflects on its first century, one world-changing accomplishment stands out: the drafting, promotion, passage, and ongoing stewardship of the GI Bill. When American Legion past National Commander Harry Colmery distilled multiple government responsibilities into just 10 initiatives in a Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, critics declared that it would break the United States Treasury. Instead, the provisions approved in the GI Bill returned $7 for every $1 the government invested. And among the provisions were free college education for wartime veterans, which educated tens of millions over the decades and changed United States expectations generally about higher education, making it available to Americans other than the elite classes. Low-interest home loans requiring no down payment, which drove a construction and civil engineering boom that rapidly accelerated the United States economy and helped create the American middle class. Low-interest business and farm loans. Fair appeals processes for military personnel disputing the conditions of their discharges. Adequate VA hospitals. Timely VA benefits delivery. Short-term unemployment compensation for newly discharged veterans making the transition to civilian careers. The American Legion has worked with Congress over the decades to improve the GI Bill for subsequent generations of wartime veterans. The most recent example of this is the Harry W. Commemorating Veterans Educational Assistance Act of 2017, which improves and extends GI Bill benefits for post-9/11 generation veterans and their dependents. This measure, named for the American Legion past national commander who drafted the original bill, represents an upgrade from the original post-9/11 GI Bill, which was passed in 2008, for one thing, to lift restrictions on the time a veteran must use the benefit. It's known as the Forever GI Bill. But only in Washington does forever not always mean forever. Last month, the Defense Department announced a new rule which prohibits members of the armed forces with more than 16 years of service from transferring their GI Bill benefits to their dependents. We have a message to the Pentagon, Congress, and the White House. Veterans earned these benefits, and the American Legion will not stand by as you slash the intent of the Harry W. Commemorating Forever GI Bill. We will also honor the pillars by working to eradicate veteran homelessness, lobbying for a well-funded Department of Defense, supporting diplomatic solutions to global problems. No one dislikes war more than those who have fought in it. Fighting to hold together retirement benefits and health care services for military retirees. Such incentives help attract top people to the military. Pressing for a constitutional amendment that would protect our United States flag from intentional desecration. Providing programs like Boys State and Boys Nation and the National High School Oratorical Contest to incentivize young people to take a strong interest in government, public service, and constitutional awareness. Offering competitive programs like American Legion Baseball and junior shooting sports that promote good sportsmanship, discipline, and teamwork. Raising and delivering millions of dollars in scholarship money for the children of military personnel killed on duty since 9/11, or disabled at a rating of 50% or greater. And nobody does this better than our American Legion Riders. Providing comfort items and recreational activities free of charge for military personnel recovering from wounds and illnesses in Department of Defense facilities. We have impacted more than 9,000 veterans, patients, and their families last year through our Operation Comfort Warriors program. Standing strong for veterans and families coping with the challenges of post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, signature wounds of the war on terror. Delivering unparalleled natural disaster relief, including cash grants and the use of American Legion posts as civil defense centers and shelters for people who have been driven out of their homes by unforeseen circumstances, and much, much more. To commemorate the American Legion Centennial, our organization has focused largely on empowering its galaxy of local posts, each of which has its own legacy of service, to tell the centennial story at the community level and increase awareness of all the American Legion is and does, why the American Legion exists. Each American Legion post is different, its own separate corporation, and its functions vary by community. Some American Legion posts operate local ambulance services in hospitals. Some have blue ribbon child safety programs. The Wyoming American Legion runs that state's high school rodeo championship, while Legionnaires in Mexico dedicate their time, money, and efforts to disabled children there. In Pennsylvania, the American Legion's Housing for Homeless Veterans program is a model of success for the rest of the nation. In Montana, the American Legion places markers along the roadways to remind drivers to slow down and be careful. Throughout America, the American Legion adopts highways for cleanup, teaches school children about military history, leads flag retirement ceremonies with the Boy Scouts, offers after-school mentoring for inner-city children, leads and sponsors junior ROTC programs, marches in Memorial Day and Veterans Day parades, coordinates fireworks displays on the 4th of July, commits millions of hours a year to volunteer at VA medical facilities, donates tens of thousands of pints of blood a year, and decorates the graves of those who fell fighting for our nation. The American Legion does all this at the community, state, and national levels because veterans believe they have an individual obligation to continue serving their country. And in doing so, they serve one another by sharing in a commitment to meaningful purpose, which for most veterans is something they learned by serving in the United States Armed Forces. Today, the American Legion is crossing a threshold, an opportunity to connect its legacy of accomplishments and significance in communities to a vision for the future. Just as it was when the World War I generation handed the reins over to the World War II generation, then the Korean War generation, Vietnam, and Gulf War, the future belongs to a new generation of veterans, those who have served in the war on terror. One by one and in groups, these honorable wartime veterans are joining the American Legion, assuming leadership roles and advancing a vision for the future that matches that of our World War I founders. Serve veterans, support the military, promote Americanism, and create healthy educational opportunities for young people. Many are joining because they've been the firsthand beneficiaries of American Legion's support in a struggle to resume civilian life after wartime service. The American Legion's values, regardless of when they were first conceived, are as timeless as the common bond of military service across the generations. How the American Legion executes those values, the pillars, is certain to change as the future unfolds, but the underlying commitment to service, to community, state, and nation, under the flag for which so many lives were given to ensure our nation's freedoms, will never change. It's also a legacy that under my watch, we will continue to celebrate. Again, thank you for your support and for giving me the honor to serve you. Thank you for your service to our country and for your continued service in the American Legion. I hope you will all have the opportunity this afternoon to visit us in the Hilton Hotel from 4 to 6 o'clock on the 3rd floor for hospitality. May God bestow plentiful blessings upon you, this great American Legion, and the greatest of all nations, the United States of America. Thank you.